Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Um, Very exciting event. Um, so I'm going to give a quick introduction to a couple of the clubs because I know we have people from both clubs. So GTXR is the club that I am a co-president with, or for. So we are mainly focused on beginner-friendly, student-led VR development projects. We also do workshops and industry professional speaker events. This is one of those. We also have professor-backed XR projects, research projects, really good XR research opportunities in the space. We also have social VR gaming events, and we compete in VR esports alongside the GTVR Esports Club, so we're kind of partnered with them. So if you're interested in building the future of computing, I would recommend that you join our Discord, because we are kind of similar to you guys, and we're kind of cool. So also for VGDev, for the people who are not, who are from GTXR, I don't think they need as much of an introduction because they are a larger club, but they have video game projects every semester. They have a lot of different types of talent and no experience required, similar to GTXR, and you have the opportunity to network with alumni across the industry. So this is their club and QR code. So the game that we are representing today and I have the opportunity to work on is Veil. It is the best VR shooter on the market, in my humble opinion. We have previously had 70,000 monthly active players, and can I say what we're getting up to now? We recently went free to play, more so free to play demo with paid main game, and we're up to about 100,000 monthly active users for the month, or 130,000 for the month of November. Very exciting. We have 50,000 people in our Discord server, 4.9 stars on Quest and Steam. Recently, or earlier this summer, before the free-to-play update, we launched the Citadel, which is a kind of social hub experience for people to have more reasons to spend time in the game and enjoy it. And as for the future of the game, we're working on a lot of different game modes in the coming years, including an extraction shooter mode. So without further ado, we're going to play the launch trailer just so you get a better idea of the vibe of the game. And so we have an audio problem currently. Wait. All right. So first of all, should we like mute the?
What I should do is I should close out of the tab that I have open that has the Twitch stream.
Oh, okay.
Let me just do that quickly.
And then we can pause that. All right.
We do hard things at Georgia Tech.
Some audio streams.
No, like I just left it tab open. Didn't close it. I make things harder.
Chancellor of Tech.
Yeah, that's what my official job title is. Okay, now we can turn on the volume. And now we
Should be good?
Yeah.
So this was the launch trailer from, I believe, February. Yeah, yeah, pretty sick, I think. To speak a little bit more about the specific of the genre of what the game is, it is a 5v5 tactical shooter. The main game mode is Artifact, which is a search and destroy shooter, so very similar to CSGO. But there's also a lot of more casual game modes that you can shuffle through in matchmaking, like all the classics, free-for-all, team deathmatch, Scouts Knives is one of my favorites, One in the Chamber, a lot of different options. And it is made in Unreal Engine 5 currently. We are, I believe, one of the only VR games currently developing in Unreal Engine 5. So that is very interesting, and there are challenges with that as well. So I want you guys to be thinking of questions that you might want to ask about the game for our amazing guests to answer, and there's just some information on the game to help you think about that. So I will be welcoming our first guest, Albert Ovadia. He is a founder and CTO of XLab.
Hey, Jack. What's up?
He is also a musical DJ artist in his free time. He leads all development in Vail. He's kind of like the head of the dev team. There's like the dev guys, and then there's the art guys. And dev, biased, but we're cooler, more technical, as you know.
Yeah.
He's a huge UE5 nerd. He can tell you anything about the engine and like development software practices for it. Like I said, on the side, he's a musical artist and techno DJ. His username on different platforms is Ood, A-O-U-D. You can find him on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music. And I think he's a pretty cool boss. So here are his links if you want to connect with him. I believe we have said that they're cool with connecting with more people. So yeah, and I'll have those links later as well. Now for our, and you can have a seat there if you would like. And for our second guest, we have JP Minetos. Woo! So here is another very cool guy. He is an investor in XLab. He is a VR data analyst and also a VR nerd, which is a very good thing to be in this industry. He invests in VR, gaming, metaverse, BCIs, and other future technologies. As a VR store data analyst, he is constantly sharing on social media very helpful insights and current trends on the state of the industry. And he has over 1,000 followers on Twitter and over 4,000 followers on LinkedIn. Here are his links if you want to get in touch with him or learn more. And that's what we got. And a little bit about myself, just so you know, like, who the hell is leading this thing. My name's Jack. I'm an XR game developer at Georgia Tech. I'm a third-year computer science major. I have the media and people threads. I'm also a co-president of GTXR alongside my good friend Ilkin Mamadli here. I do a lot of VR development projects in my free time. I have competed in 3 XR hackathons, and I have won all 3 of them. I have interned at XLab full-time this summer, and now I have the amazing opportunity to be working there part-time, and I would really love to continue working here part-time until college and after college, and I really love the work that I do there. So far I've worked on bug fixes, network synced popcorn buckets, mini golf for the social hub, B-Haptics tax suit implementation, which is for people in the VR space who are enthusiasts and want to spend $500. They can buy a haptic vest with like motors on your body. And so I designed and implemented all of the haptic events in the game to suit that. And currently I'm working on VR gun stock calibration, which is a Herculean effort in rotators and quaternions and linear algebra and vector math. And so help me God. This is my website, jackenglish.net. If you want to contact me or connect with me, all my links are on there. So that is our introductions for today. And now for, oh no, my custom font. That's so sad. Now for the actual Q&A portion of the event. So I will be paneling, I will be hosting the panel event, kind of moderating it. I want you guys to be thinking of questions to ask. obviously Albert is a technical Unreal Engine guy, and JP knows a lot about the VR space and investing. If you're interested in doing entrepreneurship in the space, and yeah, I also have a lot of questions prepared. So I guess I will put the microphone like right here.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend passing it.
Alright, yeah. Enjoy that.
Oh, this is al dente.
So, to start off the event, just to start the discussion a little bit here, I have a question for Albert. Or no, I have a question for both of you. Just to start, we're going to get a little more technical in the evening, but just to start it light, what have been some of your favorite or most influential video games or pieces of media throughout your life?
No, please. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go
I'll
first.
take either. I'm getting peer pressured here. I don't know if this mic works or not, or if it's a symbolic microphone.
I think it's for the Twitch.
It's for the Twitch stream. All right. All right, good. Well, everyone can hear me, so
Very important.
that's good. Hi, Twitch, and hello, everyone here. Thank you guys for coming. So, my favorite pieces of media, we can talk specifically more about games. I would say, I grew up in this cohort, being in the late Gen Z, of really getting acclimated with games, and while we were on the precipice shift of going to 3D graphics and online gaming, so more so than other age demographics, and like a lot of you guys, really growing up in the social era of online gaming. And that was way more influential to me than any sort of movies or other pieces of media, because you're able to say your own narrative and have tons of different experiences inside. As for some of the favorite games, of course, there's the classics. Super Mario 64 is always great, awesome platforming. Favorite competitive game is Counter-Strike. So some of the influence here with Vale, a deep love for 5v5 tax, love-hate relationship. Skyrim is always a good one. So a lot of different game mediums, and of course now a lot of great VR content.
Yeah. Damn. Echo, man. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the kind of like the interactive media aspect where you kind of get to make your own narrative, your own movie, you make decisions, you're in these like deep worlds. And then once you plug multiplayer into it, it gets really crazy. Yeah, my experience was similar. I got really into video games, and everything else kind of could have happened almost in any other decade, like plus or minus 50 years or something. But this onset of, hey, you're playing multiplayer, maybe you're on dial-up or early DSL, and you're kind of in there, like on a team and taking it really seriously. It was really great. And then also, for me, there's this really memey, like if you Google it later, you'll see it. But there was this absurd marketing push for Unreal Tournament in the late 90s. And maybe you guys have seen it before. But it was like on the cover of a magazine, and it was like, this is the future. This is real. This is a real screenshot of real gameplay. And it's like the worst, like unlit with no shadows, no real lighting, like Space Marine, bro. And it's just like, but anyway, but at the time, there was something about playing online, even with these like subpar graphics, like think Quake or arena shooters or whatever, if you guys know what that is. And yeah, something about the multiplayer thing, the people you met online, connecting with people. And what was great about it was you didn't even know what the other person looked like, and you didn't really have voice chat yet because internet bandwidth was very limited. So sometimes you had voice chat, but not guaranteed. And yeah, it was very deeply, weirdly social. Like those friendships and relationships were really important. So yeah, there was something about gaming, getting to know each other online, all these things. That was huge. So I think the games that affected me the most, I obviously love music and I love movies and I love all books and whatever. But I don't think anything reaches the level of video games, which is probably why we're all here and you guys are like doing art or making software you're crazy. That stuff's hard. I don't know why you're doing it, but yeah. But totally, JP. Like the second you talk about gaming, being online, playing with people, that's kind of like that's huge. That's like, yeah. I think that happening, I guess, starting late '90s, going up to like, I don't know, mid 2000s, like a lot happened there where, and now it's ubiquitous, right? Like people, I have some friends that stay home on a Friday night and their plan is just to game. Like it's like going out or whatever. Like they don't care. Like they're not going out. They're not at the
That's their
club.
social time.
Yeah, 100%. For them, it's more meaningful even. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'm answering the question. Yeah. With just a barely long enough cable. Oh yeah. Let's get comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, I guess on the weekends I do. Yeah, VR chat is a lot more meaningful. I have a lot more friends in VR chat across the U.S. XR developers than in person. I'm not a big, you know, frat party club guy, but I guess so. Should I answer like what my biggest inspirations are? Yeah. All right. So before I wanted to be a VR game developer, I wanted to be a game developer, and what the catalyst, the game that really solidified that for me, that made me realize like this is what I have to do as a living, was when I played through The Last of Us Part 2. I know it's a divisive game, but to me it is about as close to perfection as you can get from every factor. Like what they promised was delivered. Graphics, story, gameplay, beautiful. I mean, the story is everything to me. But there's that. And then when my friend got a Quest 2 for Christmas and I demoed it, I was like, holy shit. And I got one the next day. And I've been snowballing ever since. So it just experiencing beautiful, amazing worlds, continuing to learn more about development and make more things, make a bunch of projects. I think Veil's pretty cool. And yeah, there's a lot of like unique kind of VR games that I could point to for inspiration. I think games like Veil or like Bone Lab that have very in-depth, realistic gunplay where you can like see individual bullets and like reload manually and all that. I think that's very inspiring. I've wanted to try to like implement that myself on my own, but yeah, enough about me. All right, now I'm going to give you whiplash with a very in-depth question. We're going to kind of jump around a little bit. So this one is directed toward Albert. Also, obviously, at any point, if JP wants to, if you want to jump in on any question, you can answer as well. So, for context, Veil used to be a Unreal Engine 4 game that was specifically for PC VR. That was before this year. So I believe it was all of 2023 you kind of put your head down and didn't have many content updates. So before 2023, Veil was a Unreal Engine 4 game PC VR, and it was kind of dying because it was PC VR. PC VR has like probably 5 or 10% of the player base. Is that right? Something around there?
About give or take 5 to 10%.
So, or compared, so like that means that Quest standalone is about like 90 to 95% of all players in any given VR game if it's cross-platform. So if you want to be financially viable and successful, it's just, that's not going to happen. Throughout all of 2023, Albert and other people at XLab made the very tough decision to put their head down and rebuild, what did I say? In order to ensure the future success of the game, you are faced with the difficult decision to spend almost the entire year rebuilding the game in Unreal Engine 5 and optimizing it so that it could run on Quest standalone. During this time where there were almost no content updates and the already small PC VR user base dwindled greatly. Now that the game has had its main release on Quest and has amazing numbers, what was this decision process like for you, and was it difficult, and how did you decide that you had to make this process? Was it difficult, and were you afraid of failure? Were you afraid that the game was going to die during that time period?
Oh man.
Yeah, actually, I think, yeah, so the question's actually really interesting because it goes back to, I mean, I'm trying to think how this information could be helpful to somebody here, maybe, because, yeah, I wish I could have asked myself this sooner. Yeah, so when you're picking the software you're going to use or the framework or the programming language or the engine or whatever, there's a lot of stuff to think about because you're kind of getting married to the thing. And whatever thing you build on top of, whether it's Unity, Unreal Engine, or another game engine, or maybe something else, or maybe you're making your own thing, whatever, you're going to get kind of married to it. And you're going to be stuck with it basically. And you're going to have to be very committed to making that thing work. I've been using Unreal since 2014, and I'm extremely comfortable with it. And I've been programming in C and C++ since I was 10 or 11, and that was the main reason I was drawn to Unreal, is because it was in C++. So I know the engine extraordinarily well, and one of the nice things about something like Unreal Engine is, although it's not free, it's open source, so you have access to the full source. For example, with Unity, you don't. So if you hit a roadblock with Unity, you open a ticket or something, and you just like do rain dances until they fix your problem. Which in a world like VR, that's really not great. So if you're doing anything like really interesting or complicated, you're probably not going to find an off-the-shelf solution. So you're going to have to go low level and deal with stuff. So VR is still in that phase where you kind of just have to deal with a lot of low-level stuff that probably in a few years people will forget about, and it'll just be the way it will be, whatever that is, whether it's good or bad, I don't know. The same way, like today, people build a bunch of apps using all this like super outdated web tech, and it's like super laggy, and nothing's a proper native app anymore, and it's like all Java or whatever it is. So anyway, so going into Unreal from the beginning, I was very committed, knew it extremely well. I know all of its idioms and quirks because I've been using it forever. Like anything you guys might use, you know, like there's people that do like crazy stuff with like RPG Game Maker or whatever, and they know like everything about that software. So I'm kind of like that with Unreal. And so no, I never thought for a second we weren't going to make it work, because like we made it work in the first place. The more you do small things and then you accomplish them and you do a lot of small projects, it's kind of funny, but like you get to a point where you're like, whatever, like everything's broken, but I've fixed it 100 times before, I'll figure it out. So all of a sudden you can go to sleep without being stressed. You always kind of just are like, I'll figure it out, and you just keep figuring it out. But yeah, breaking it down into smaller things. I think what was difficult about us going with Unreal Engine 5, upgrading the game from UE4 to UE5, was just planning it and figuring out in what order to do stuff, and just like the human aspect, really, because it required like all hands on deck for about a year. We upgraded to Unreal Engine 5 because at that time, and I still believe in it today because I think OpenXR is very important. We went with Unreal Engine 5 because it's not actually possible to be OpenXR compliant with UE4. And at the time, it was also a requirement to be on the MetaQuest store, and they denied us our waiver, so we actually didn't even have a choice anyway. So, because there's also, anytime you're changing tech, it can be very expensive and crazy. So it wasn't like a light decision either. Like I've met over the years people, I have a feeling you're all mostly technical here, but over the years I've met people and they're like, yeah, our studio's working on this game in Unity, but we've been on it for like 2 years. We're thinking about switching to Unreal. What do you think? And like when someone asks that question, you can tell like they're not technical, because like it doesn't work that way. So yeah, what you should know is that whatever you pick, try to use as little plugins as possible. don't borrow or take loans from any other code bases. Like, you got to just build your own thing, because in the beginning you're obsessed with having something that works. But once you go deeper and deeper into your project, you need more and more customization, because otherwise you're just like fighting, like, and you'll end up wasting so much time maintaining. Um, so yeah, like in our case, there's a lot of things that go into it, but yeah, we learned a lot from the process, and we learned again, like, you, at the end of the day, for what you really need once you're years into a project, you need to just start making all your own stuff from scratch and making stuff custom. Again, it's tough because in the beginning you're just trying really hard to get some air under the wings and like make the thing go, but then towards the once you start getting towards the longer tail of the project, where like things really really matter and everything's really critical, you wish you had more control, but you can only get that if you're custom. So it's like there's a lot of things there that you have to balance, that they're really tough, and it's something that, damn, I wish I had known about that sooner. But I probably would have saved a year or two of my life if I had known these things before. So I don't know. At least I told you, so maybe you could think about it when you cross that bridge.
Yeah, I don't have much color.
Well, actually, I have a question for him, because this is really interesting. So VR, small market, relatively speaking, compared to like mobile or console gaming, whatever. When we were working, because when we first partnered up and all that stuff, we were, at the time, we were all about PC VR, because it's what excited us as devs also, because my rationale was, hey, work on the best and greatest hardware, because everything takes 3 times longer anyway, and by the time it's like the industry is where it needs to be, like, we'll have something that doesn't look like a Nintendo Switch game or whatever. And I think that sort of worked out, kind of. But for you, like, looking at it very analytically and very logically and very like, hey, like how do we value this thing, and like, where is this going? I don't know, like, what was that process? Because there might be a new hot thing out tomorrow, and you're going to have to ask yourself the same question. Like, do I just develop on this or that? Or yeah, there's a lot there. But I think you kind of get what I'm getting at.
So you want me to talk about platforms?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can kind of talk about that. Well, you guys.
If I were them, I don't want to know about that.
Okay.
That's like a big thing.
So then before I talk about all this, the first TLDR thing you should know is, if you want to build in VR, you should only build on Quest. That should be your only and primary focus. That being said, now we can kind of go on with the story, right? And that's because we have to just think about the distribution here, right? So if we're talking logically, and you and I have had a lot of conversation about this. Your co-founder Jonathan and I have had a lot of conversations about this. You guys started 2016 was the first year of the studio, right? And so you have to think, 2016, VR is still very esoteric, right? We're a few years after the DK1. Facebook just buys Oculus. I mean, you pretty much only have a few. You have the Rift, and what do you have? The HTC Vive. Like, these are the only commercially viable headsets, and they were hardly commercially viable, right? You need not only the $600, $700, $800 headset, but you need lighthouses. You need the PC, right? And you have to have something with decent compute in it. So you're in a $1,500 build. So all in, you're at this $2,200 price point. And I think for a long time, this evangelical class of VR users sort of led the narrative on where VR goes. But it's a very small subset of who's actually playing. Ever since Meta really developed the standalone system and launched the Quest, and namely the Quest 2 in 2021, that has become indicative of this is where the future of VR is going. And we have to think about it just from friction. $300, standalone compute, no PC, no tethering, no lighthouses. It makes it obvious. And we have the data that backs it up. And I know you guys had originally planned for PCVR, and it makes sense. There's a lot of voice, and a lot of people who are very active in this space are pro PCVR because it still is the most immersive. There is some cost to going on standalone, but you guys saw the numbers, switched to standalone, and have absolutely crushed it from that. Right? You had already built a really great game, switched it to standalone, so you made something that was already great in PCVR, and then changed the market into the platform and optimized it. And now it's currently the highest rated trending game for the month. in VR. It's overwhelmingly positive rated. So yeah, it was perfectly executed. I was talking about that with Jonathan earlier this week.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe not perfectly executed internally, but I'm glad that that's
Externally, it's perfectly executed. The data looks great. Yes.
I was really stressed out. I wasn't even involved, but I was stressed out looking at what was going on. But we pulled it off, right?
Yes. Yes. I have noticed you guys have developed a few more gray hairs.
Yeah.
Yes. Internally, but no, it works great, and it very much validates like, hey, yeah, you can have this core PC VR group, but in order to have a really scalable business, what are you guys at 70,000 MAUs? I think that was the number, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that in PC VR. There's just not a big enough player base, and that's only possible on the 30+ million Quest units.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that the answer you were looking for?
That's super important.
Yeah.
Because it's important to hear this just because sometimes you'll be working with like new tech or whatever, like the new shiny thing, and you'll be so deep in it and you'll be like, this is the way, this is the awesome thing. But not everybody's going to spend like $3,000 and go through a bunch of hoops to like download the thing you're making. So it's an interesting thing because when you start to go to like actually making a product that you want a lot of people to use, you actually need to think about like where are they going to run this thing and how are they going to use it. You know, like even nowadays, like I still notice sometimes apps, for whatever reason, we'll have to decide like, ooh, do we launch on iOS first or Android? Or like, could we try to pull off launching on both at the same time? You know, because the second you add an additional platform, you have more QA, you have more things that can go wrong. Each platform has its own weird constraints and rules, and you end up having, obviously with time and experience, you get better at it, but you have to put in all these like little hacks and things in place for each platform for it to behave as expected. So what he said is true. Like, somebody asked me the other day, like, blah, 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 like, what should I do? And I was like, honestly, just do the Quest thing. Just go hard on Quest because that's where all the users are. But, yeah, you know, I don't know if it'll be true forever, but that's kind of where it's going, so, yep.
Until we have a serious competitor, which we don't see, Pico, so ByteDance, TikTok, they're not in the United States. Google might come out with the headset. There's some speculation. We're going to see some announcements in December. If it's not on standalone and the headset's not less than $500, there's not going to be any competition. So for right now, until we see otherwise, you have to build for Quest.
Yeah. Jack, you want to take a question from anybody?
Oh, we do have a question, just so we know. There is people watching on Twitch, and we will be taking questions on Twitch if anyone online wants to ask any questions. And I believe we have a question right now. I can repeat it.
The first question comes from Go Team Light on Twitch. Question for JP and Albert. Do you guys have any advice on considering free-to-play versus paid content on the MetaQuest store, especially if you want to maintain the longevity of your studio?
Classic. So yeah, to repeat the question for, I guess, you know, if people can't hear it on Twitch, basically asking what are the considerations between free to play and paid, especially if you're considering the longevity of your studio, and how do you decide on that? I kind of know the answer as well, but obviously.
To be honest, I want to hear JP because. Yeah. Oh, here. I'll repeat the question again. Yeah, free to play or paid for your app or game in VR. And we actually have a guy here that like literally has been torturing himself looking at this back and forth for a long time, not just me. I want to hear from him because I already know what I think, and I'm very curious because I have my nose in the computer with my one game, but he actually looks at so many different things and speaks to so many other like game companies and stuff, like, and hardware people. Like his perspective is really interesting. So JP, it's your turn now. Sorry.
Do I need to repeat a question for the fourth time? Does everyone understand the question? All right, we're good here. Well, actually, with your co-founder Albert, Jonathan, he and I have been discussing this a lot as of late because Veil, as you guys saw earlier in the slides, recently went free to play, and that is more of a byproduct of the current Quest meta. No pun intended, but the way the ecosystem is going, we're seeing it start to become more akin to mobile ecosystems where you have to have a free-to-play game in order to get someone interested in downloading or persevering. There's going to be a massive friction point. The core user base right now for Quest is boys 13 to 18. Generally speaking, that archetype probably makes up 60, 70%, I would say, of the user base. And the most popular games that we've seen this year, this is the first year I think we really saw successful titles. If you guys have heard of Gorilla Tag, yes, if you guys are VR people, you guys don't know what Gorilla Tag is. You'd be surprised by how many people are not familiar with what but it's an incredible game. $100 million in sales. I believe 12 million lifetime users. They're doing 3 million monthly. I think it's incredible numbers for standalone VR. And I think a lot of people can't comprehend that they did 100 million in revenue despite being a free-to-play game. But this is nothing new. This is what we're seeing with live service and content updates. Where especially with that core user who's that teenager who might not even have a card. Maybe they're using mom and dad's card to be on it, right? But when you have a premium title and you don't have any IP to back it up, the buyer's taking a really big risk on saying this. This is $30 that I worked really hard for. Do I want to take the risk and buy it on here? Oftentimes that's no, and we can see that in the attrition rate from when they go and visit the store page to where they come and drop off. However, getting somebody to spend is a lot easier once they're already familiar and have some sort of equity in the game or in the ecosystem. So take Veil for example, the Citadel's social free-to-play hub that just came in. It's free to play. So the core Veil game is now considered a DLC, but you can now come hang out with friends, be in the social lobbies, not in the competitive, really deep core game. But now players are able to come spend time inside of Veil. They're able to socialize. They're able to see their friends. They're able to see the quality of the game, the physics. Hey, this is a lot of fun. I'm now making friends in here. Oh, and now they're going to go and play competitive. Well, I want to join them, right? So then from there, it's a much easier sell because they already can see the reasoning and the value that, hey, this is a great game. I'm enjoying it. Making the sale. I don't have to take a bet if I'm going to like it or not. I've enjoyed what I've gotten so far, and I can play more now, and it's an easy sell. So I do think the future of VR is free to play for social games. I do still think there's room for some premium titles. We saw Batman come out this last week. That was a premium title, I think $50, give or take, and that's done. Was it 60? Yeah. Okay. So it was full release price. Okay. So what you would think of, and that's done really well. VR has always been seen, and VR games haven't really been seen as full games for a while. So premium games used to cost $30 on the store, and now they're moving up. So there's validation that you can have that for premium games. But if you're making a social game, one, you need to attract players, and you can attract players by making your experience free to try. So the TLDR of that would be, if your game is social multiplayer, it needs to have some sort of free-to-play aspect to it. If it is a single-player title, you could get away with it being premium.
Yeah.
Yes, but the future of VR is social and free-to-play.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I think I have a little more input on this as well. At least from my perspective, from what I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Veil, when it was first starting development, or for up until recently, it was more getting its feet off of the ground and actually getting the core content of the game solid and actually making a solid game. And so I believe that your previous stance on it was you made the game $30 up front so that you could focus on making the game actually good rather than focusing on monetization. And obviously that's changed now. I think that the time and place that Veil went free to play was the right time and place. I think it was the perfect time to do it, because the game is in a good state now, and now that the game is fully featured, it had its 1.0 release in February, and it's solid, and they're adding content updates to it now. I think that focusing more on making it sustainable and actually making more money is great. And also there's been a shift in the platform recently with how Meta has changed the Quest store to be a lot more open rather than curated. So before there was Meta had a very high bar for like releasing games onto the main store. It had to be very curated. It was more like a console, and then recently and then there was also a uh, app lab, which was for like early access games that weren't as polished, but they were like pretty hidden. You had to search for them specifically. But recently, Meta opened the store up a lot more to be. It's just a lot more open, and so there's a lot. It's a lot harder to compete on the store. They made the searchability like kind of bad recently. Hopefully, they'll improve on that. But given the fact that the dynamic of the store has changed, I think this was also like the perfect opportunity to go free to play, because there's a thing when stores become more open and there's more competition, you tend to get like a race to the bottom, and you see that with mobile gaming. Basically, every iPhone or Android app is free, and people don't even consider downloading things if they're more than a couple dollars, for the most part on mobile. Obviously, VR is different because it has a lot higher quality bar, and it can be a lot more of an immersive experience, and there's room for AAA games. But I think it was like the perfect time for the maturity of the game and the industry to like kind of transition to free to play.
Yeah, can I add something to that? Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point there. And the other idea of going with free to play versus a paid game is not only are you trying to make a good game, you are competing for everyone's attention when they are on the store. Just like when you're going to engage with any sort of content, you have to make a choice. You're watching YouTube. Am I going to click this or am I going to click that? Obviously, with YouTube, everything's free, so there isn't that same standard. But oftentimes, if someone's going to make this commitment, they have to have it easy for them to make that decision. If it's easy for them to install, if it's no questioning, if it's a self-evident truth that, yes, I should come and install this, the probability that they're going to be able to stay and then become a retaining paying customer is way higher than you just looking like another name to go and see. And Jack makes a really good point here. Yeah, so we used to have a system for Meta where we had the main store, which is curated. Pretty much you have to know someone. You have to. It was a real honor to get on there. And if you got on there, you'd get really good organic reach and discovery. And then there was everyone who was second class who didn't make that. That was App Lab. And Meta's taken this more meritocratic shift to where everyone can be online. And the consequence of that is the store within the last year has 3 times the number of applications on it and is only continuing to grow. And so people are shipping a lot on there. And as an attempt to gain users, they're making it free to play. So even if you think your title is premium and worth it, you're going to lose because people will choose to play the copious other free to play games. So free to install.
Yeah.
Just kind of touched on your point there. You have anything you want to add to this, Albert?
Yeah, so that goes back into game design. If any of you are making social multiplayer type games, you have to think, like, how is this thing going to be free? How are people going to play it? Like, how does this really work? Because yeah, it's going to change the way you probably make your game. So yeah, I think we're going to see for some time. I think we're going to continue to see this free to play model. And yeah, it's something you have to think of from the very beginning, if possible. I'm not even sure. It's really hard, but you got to figure out that path for free to play for whatever you're working on. I think this applies to everything now. Like, weird example, but I don't know, like Duolingo or Credit Karma, any of these ubiquitous apps, they all have a crazy funnel with free entry, and then they show you the value, and then people get into it and they stick, right?
Yep.
And you just got to have that funnel now, otherwise not going to make it. Yeah, because everybody else is doing it. So yeah, you gotta find a way to make it free, which, if you love something, So yeah, Jack.
Do we have any questions from the in-person audience? Yeah.
I think you make a really interesting point that you're talking about. And there's two different subsidies that we should really discuss. There's software development, and Meta has a great initiative programs to encourage people to come and build. But I think you were talking more about subsidizing the hardware cost, right? To get the Quest 3S, it's coming out this holiday season, just came out, is at a $300 price point. Meta Reality Labs is losing over $1 billion a quarter to do this. So that is true. However, even with the cost of the headset being subsidized, the incentive is becoming ever more clear for developers to build for Quest because of the number of headsets on there. So even if the headset price goes up, which I don't really see it coming past this $500 price point, it'll still always be the incentive for the developer to come and build where they can serve 30, 40, soon 50 million customers versus a maybe max 1 to 3 million on PC VR. And then to your other part with compute, right, to be able to load on Edge or on the cloud. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of really cool headsets who are working on this to say, hey, we're going to offload compute. So like big screen beyond. I think it's a 200-gram headset. Or maybe even less. I mean, it's less than half the weight of the Quest. It feels great, but you have to also think, in order to have that, there's a huge cost basis of having a PC and having to set up trackers. You're not standalone. It's not convenient. That price point is still a really huge factor. We saw this where Meta launches the Quest Pro at nearly $1,000, so almost 3 times the price of the Quest 2 and now Quest 3S, did abysmally lower sales than what we saw previously. Same thing with Apple Vision Pro. Really awesome piece of tech, but that $3,500 price point is just going to drive consumers away. So as Meta continues to invest and lose capital, they're going to gain a market share and presumably a monopoly for VR distribution. But really good question. Sure.
In terms of hardware subsidy, I'm pretty sure that the Quest 3, the $500 kind of mid-range headset, is actually sold at about the cost of producing it. So the Quest 3 itself is, I don't think, not really losing that much money. And also there's not like PS5, like any console like the PS5 or Xbox, whatever. They are also sold at a hardware loss, or like kind of a little bit of a hardware loss, and they make a lot of, obviously that's the price, that's the value, like the offer for a console is that it's cheaper upfront hardware cost, but they make money back through accessories and selling software, and PlayStation is incredibly profitable. So I don't think that having a subsidized headset like devalues the market in any way. I think that is perfectly, I mean, maybe when Meta like starts to not lose $1 billion this quarter, that would be a little better, but yeah. There's another interesting kind of phenomenon happening where you might expect that PC VR headsets might be able to be cheaper because they don't have a whole computer inside of them, but it's actually not the case at all. Like, it's extremely hard to find a PC VR only headset for that cheap price of a standalone Quest, like $300 or so, because they can't subsidize, they're just hardware, and they have much lower volumes of production, so the economies of scale aren't in their favor. And they also they tend to target like the higher end consumer who wants to spend more money on like an excellent experience with hardware. So yeah, I guess that's just where the PC VR hardware kind of sits right now.
And Meta owns the entire market on there. So every time there's a subsidized user, they're coming in and they're buying a game. Any sort of game or app experience you buy on the Meta store, one, you're required to list on there. It's against TOS to circumvent that. They collect a 30% fee every time it's there. So the idea being that the customer base grows, the cost of the headset gets cheaper, and then the lifetime value of the customer, as long as they stay in the ecosystem, continues to go up. It ends up being net advantageous for Meta or any of these platforms. Sure.
Or no, could you repeat it really quick?
I kind of had a little trouble hearing it as well. I'm sorry.
So, I think you said Qualcomm, who makes the Snapdragon chip in the Quest, they're having some disputes with ARM, which is the chip architecture standard that is currently being used, and they license that architecture to Qualcomm to produce the chips. And so your question was, do you have any thoughts on how that might impact Meta in how they operate, since they rely on Snapdragon?
Yes, I don't have a good answer to that. I spend a lot more time looking at the software and platform rather than the hardware architecture, so I don't think I could give a articulate enough response to that. So if one of you guys wants to take that. You want to take it?
I don't have an amazing answer. Your other question, by the way, was very thought-provoking. I was still kind of thinking about that too. Yeah, so I guess the question, if I can reduce it or try to simplify it, is like, if one is building, because by the way, if you're building for an ARM chip, you're building, like, your game engine depends on it. There's a lot of risk there. So like if that changes for some reason, I'm sure that's a risk that a company like Meta has had to consider very deeply. And yeah, it's a great question. I think that Meta and them have a pretty good relationship, though. The reason I say that is because, yeah, ARM chips live in an interesting in-between. Like, they haven't had the growth of something like, what GPUs and whatever have experienced. And I can't ever imagine them doing anything that wouldn't just bolster the position of, like, Meta is subsidizing this industry in crazy ways that, like, we don't even understand, that maybe they don't even want us to know because it'd be, like, embarrassing or something. So, yeah, no, I'm very optimistic about that. Also, I've messed around with a lot of stuff, both from Intel and ARM in that, like, area, and everything for VR, ARM actually does kind of care about VR. They obviously care very much about mobile. And yeah, they've been pretty proactive with developer stuff. Like, I would put them on about the same level as AMD with how proactive they are with developers and things. Like, yeah, NVIDIA, AMD, and ARM are all doing great things. Also, Qualcomm, this is a whole other thing, but Qualcomm has made a really, really strong push to be extremely visible and demonstrate that they care a lot about VR and gaming as a whole. They're at every conference, at everything, and I've done a couple of like NDA type demos with them before, and yeah, they have people that are really, really excited about what they're doing. So no, I'm very optimistic about them, which is interesting. Yeah, because they're kind of like a weird little footnote in this story, but they're really important. Yeah, but yeah, with as ubiquitous as handsets are, because at the end of the day, what we're really doing is taking a mobile handset and like putting lenses on it and strapping it to your face. Like, mobile's not going away. This stuff's not going away. Android, I had certain hesitation and resistance to it a long time ago. And Android has a lot of its own quirks and issues, but the truth is it's pretty proven and it works. There's like platforms and ecosystems that are like kind of perfect, and then there's the ones people actually use, and Android is one that, everybody, at the end of the day, iOS and Android are huge. Like, you're not going to be a professional developer in any capacity without touching one of these two worlds, or both. So, but yeah, you definitely got me thinking. Since I'm a software person, I don't think about it that much. But yeah, that's a massive risk, getting into hardware. Like, which team do you pick? If you're making a headset today, do you go call up Qualcomm or do you call someone else up? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, definitely a good question, though.
I would be like slightly more worried about Meta's dependence on Unity, in my opinion. which is another problem that they have because Unity obviously has had some rocky decisions made in the past year or so. But at the end of the day, I think we'll be all right. hate to be an optimist, but yeah, really good questions, by the way. Thank you. Yeah.
So mobile gaming is the biggest gaming subset, and I would argue that's because mobile devices are so ubiquitous and it can do so much more than just play games on it. And I would argue PCs gaming is also very big because again, you can use it to do taxes and all sorts of ideas and stuff. I've heard the argument that that's only because you can use that device for anything else. Do you agree? I always saw VR as I see it as it's a guitar band controller for now. You can you can buy a controller, but you can only use it to play that one game. And I mean I bought the Valve VR headset to go play Half-Life Alyx, but I only bought it to play Half-Life Alyx and I can't use it for anything else. Do you buy the argument that VR gaming only catch on once it's used for stuff that is not gaming? It's not. Is it only? It seems like controller trying for drugs.
So it's a really good question to ask, right? Especially because we all think of VR primarily as a gaming device, and that still is how it's being used. About 70% of top games or top apps on the Quest Store are games. So it is still primarily a gaming device. But there have been a lot of initiatives from both Meta and from developers to change this. So Meta recently, I think at AWE this year, they announced their lifestyle accelerator. And essentially what that was for is to fund third-party developers to build non-game experiences for the headsets. And that's ended up working decently well. There's been some really successful applications that exist on Quest that are not games. Some are simulation, a lot of fitness stuff. The FitXR team is great. They've become a really massive studio building a fitness program inside of VR. Trip is a meditation app that's one in our portfolio at Hartman Capital, which is a meditation app. So you're starting to see users using the headset for reasonings other than games. I think if you got the Valve Index, you kind of are limited to doing games or anything web XR, and it doesn't exist. And I actually don't really like the comparison between VR and mobile. I don't think VR is going to be as big as mobile. The mobile computer is kind of a solved problem in a way. It doesn't get any more frictionless, it doesn't get any more perfect, but there are things that are more compelling about being in a 6DoF environment and being inside VR that you couldn't get through mobile. So the question is, how are you driving people into the headset? You need to make an experience inside VR that you can't capture on a flat screen. And so that's right now really immersive games like Veil. If you want to go manually reload your clip, you're not going to go press buttons on your keyboard to do that, right? You're going to have physical embodiment rather than physical control. So if we see more apps start to take this on, and we found through the market that social tends to be the best way to do this. The social experience inside is the most akin social feeling to reality of one of us looking face to face to one another. It's not achieved in any other type of ecosystem like how you can in VR. So applications, which we're already starting to see, fitness, meditation, games, simulation, sometimes they're better in VR, and that's what's going to continue to drive adoption.
So I think that's a really good question. For me, I do think that once VR becomes a lot more ubiquitous for a lot more and a lot more practical for productivity use cases and things like that, especially virtual monitors, I think that will help the gaming player base a lot. Obviously, the primary use case for VR right now, there are exceptions, but it is gaming. For me personally, I am insane, so I do a lot of things in VR, gaming, and a lot of work in VR as well. It is possible to do that in the Quest 3. The primary thing that is keeping headsets away from these more like productivity work and even like casual like video watching is like the resolution and the comfort and price, a lot of things. But resolution is definitely the highest bar for productivity, because you need, in order to have like large virtual monitors in VR, you need to have like a 4, 5, 6K display that that is stretched across your whole field of view. So, like if you just do the basic math of like how much of your field of view a display takes up. So once that resolution gets there, and people start like, I firmly believe that once the resolution gets there, it will become a lot more popular for there will be a whole new market emerge for like productivity and like monitor replacement, because it can be better than physical monitors in terms of portability and screen real estate. And I think that when that happens, that will help the gaming space a lot, because people will buy it for productivity reasons. When the desktop computer was first becoming a thing, like in the 1900s, sometime in the 1900s, I'm not sure, I was born in 2003. I know that a lot of people, their first experience with a desktop computer was because their school or work forced them to use it. And then they were like, hey, this is pretty cool, this is good, and then it caught on as like a personal consumer device. So I think it's going to be like a rising tides lift all boats kind of thing in terms of use cases. And yeah.
Well, it has to be a more compelling experience in VR, right? Because you're competing not only with the friction of putting on the headset, but why would I watch this video in VR and not turning on my TV, right? Like everyone has these devices, everyone has a phone in their pocket. So it's tough. It's tough to say, why would I do this? And most of the time, if it requires more friction, but no more upside, everyone is going to choose the easier option, unless you're an evangelicalist, right? So people are going to be on their phones. But as experiences are starting to become more unique to VR and they become more compelling than what's offered elsewhere, you're going to see more drive to people experiencing things like that.
One more quick thing. I also think it's a false comparison to compare VR to mobile. I think that if there's anything that would replace or compete with like a phone, it would be AR glasses, and VR is 100% going to be kind of the laptop or desktop work replacement. So yeah, just an asterisk there, in my opinion.
Can I punctuate that thing? Yeah. I was gonna, yeah, everything they said, but yeah, at the end of Mark Zuckerberg's presentation during Connect recently, what was the thing he said? He said something about like the future is not down in our hands, it's up and forward or something. He said, yeah, he threw a jab at like people that are on their phone, using the phone all day, even though his whole company kind of like cash flows on that, but whatever. Anyway, so he's saying that in the future, this is my interpretation, he didn't actually say this, but I feel that he's saying that you're going to put on glasses, you're not going to be checking your device anymore, the device will be on your face, checking you or whatever. So
That sounds a little bit more dystopian.
I know. It'll tell you when you're tired. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So,
It'll read your brain.
yeah, it'll read your brain. It'll tell you like, oh, hey, you haven't drank water in 2 hours. Are you thirsty? So, no, but the truth is, I'll have mine on like some kind of minimal mode, but it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. Eventually, we won't have to do this. You'll have it on your face. It'll cover way more uses or things than we can think of right now. It's like, I'll never forget my Cuban grandparents. I got them an iPad once. They were never into computers. And anyway, they're just like, what do I use this for? Like, why do I need this? And I tried to show them, and I'm like, oh, you can get curious, you can Google stuff, whatever. And they're like, but like, why? It's hard for us to imagine right now how we're going to use these glasses, but it's the future. Some sort of AR/VR/XR/whatever glasses. I do think that's where we're going, and that could replace the mobile phone that we all know. Yeah.
All right, we're almost done. Almost done. But then you bring up a point, and then the conversation gets going. So this year at Meta Connect, I actually got to try the Orion prototype headset. Yeah, it was crazy. I had no idea how I got to do it, but I did. So I got to talk to some of the Meta engineers. Yeah, it'll replace the phone, right? It will, and that should be treated differently than the way VR headsets are used. Kind of to Jack's point about the false comparison, you should be thinking of the VR headsets as these super immersive devices. But the Orion headset is frictionless, right? And you think about it in the way we've done compute over time, interactions have become more natural, right? And this is kind of like we're having. This is where a lot of things within AI are being solved within input modality, right? Are we going to use voice? Are we using gestures? Orion was incredible because you were able just to use tracking and gestures and voice. And it was maybe the first device somebody could use who has zero technical proficiency but would understand intuitively what to do because of the capacities of it. And it was even lower friction than a phone somehow, which was incredible. So yes, that will end up replacing the phone. From a tech standpoint, it still is costing them over $10,000. The headset, they're super fragile. It was an incredible device, and we're still probably a decade away from it becoming any sort of bit commercially viable. I mean, right now, it's still in prototype, and when I talked to the engineers there, they said it wouldn't come out anytime within the 2020s. So we're still a little bit a ways to go from that, but that will be the thing that kills the phone. But VR might be the thing that solves social loneliness epidemic that we're seeing, and might make computers antiquated.
Wow. How many questions are we waiting on Twitch? Are we any?
Mostly caught up on questions for Twitch. Might have time for like one more probably, but that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Let's see. I was sort of on maybe a broader question on the development and just in general. So we think about emerging technologies in general, starting from the arcade, the home console, the Game Boy, going along at all. At some point in history, all of these were emerging technologies, and they all, even as some of them eventually settled into their niche, they brought something back into the world of games as a whole. Thinking about their ideas that were introduced in the arcade that was still used today, or introduced on the NES or the Game Boy, things like that. So what's they're used in even the most modern mobile games in that field. So what do you think? And this is for everybody. What sort of concepts do you think from VR will become ubiquitous in all gaming, or maybe already have, and we're starting to see them?
This is the game engineer question.
So one of the most one of the most unexpected like design paradigms that I've seen emerge is the gorilla tag movement, where you are like punching the ground in order to run, and that's one way to put it. But like that kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm pretty sure that that is very much here to stay. I think that is going to be like out of any like movement scheme in VR. I think that that is a very elegant solution and is going to be very popular for a long time. It is pretty motion sickness inducing if you're not used to it, but it's just a lot more intuitive and immersive than pushing a joystick. And currently with the way things are, where you're standing on flat stationary ground and you have two hands as input and that's it, like this is one of the best ways you can have movement. Like you asked if it was going to be ubiquitous and like cross-platform. I don't like obviously this can't really translate to flat screen things.
Not necessarily ubiquitous, but thinking about even mobile games, like the mobile monetization
Oh.
gaming not necessarily.
I could add maybe one thing to that. For VR, that's here to stay. So physics-based movement, VR native movement, intuitions, that's there. What VR didn't necessarily pioneer, but expedited and made a requirement was social first experiences, right? And so even now, I think going forward, we are going to see games be social by default, even if that's in a single player, that's leaderboards, that's speed running and timing and things like that. Some sort of tying the user into the social equity of the community at large. So either on the micro scale where you're interacting with other users, or in some sort of asymmetry where you are tracking or talking about the lore, connected with other players with the same shared experience. So the social will be here to stay and grow. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely people working on VR, you're always trying to reach backward, see if you can reuse some idioms or something from the past. I think VR has a lot of its own idioms and its own things that are still kind of revealing themselves. And I see that just because there's a big difference. So one cool thing about VR is if you're into VR today, you probably already kind of get it naturally. But a lot of the AA or AAA industry that have spent money on big IP, like with big names for games or whatever, that have gone in and tried to make games, they've created like fiascos out of the thing every time, because when you have a bunch of people that have been making games for 20 or 30 years and they lived the quote unquote golden age of the early 2000s console or Xbox, and that's like the people making the thing, they have all their own tricks and ways of making games that are like just actually completely incompatible with VR. Um, so in terms of all that, like when you're looking at like the pocket devices like the Game Boy and stuff and SNES and all that, like a lot of the input schemes were the same. The screen was bigger or smaller, the cartridge was bigger or smaller, but like these things were like a lot of it carried over just because it was almost like different form factors in a lot of ways. The input scheme hadn't changed much, um, which is maybe why something like the Nintendo Wii with like limited like 3DoF or whatever motion controllers was so exciting. Um, but yeah, where we're going with VR is really, it's kind of uncharted. You're not going to find a lot of useful books on the subject. Everything feels really outdated from just a couple years ago. So I don't know. I think a lot of that is still being revealed. Um, it's yeah, it's tough. It's very tough.
And one more point.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so
That's all.
maybe something else. This isn't catalyzed uniquely by VR, but it's something that's happened prevalently in VR and across other gaming systems. So you guys have seen the rise of user-generated content, UGC inside. A lot of VR devs have had to be really scrappy because there's not been a lot of resources to build, right? So it's been a lot of solo devs or really small teams, and I think we're going to start to see more of the YouTubeification of games. So in the same way that took attention from traditional Hollywood filmmakers or TV producers who had these high cost, high budgets, really expensive, streamlined experiences, I think you're going to start to see a lot more of the rise of a really successful small indie team. So Gorilla Tag, for example, that was one guy for most of the development cycle. Or take even on flat screen. I think Lethal Company was only 2 or 3 guys. BattleBit, these really successful flat games were done on pretty low budgets, but they said, hey, we're going to make a really fun game loop, right? And it'll feel more personable. It won't feel like I'm getting everything shoved over me like how it can feel from playing a AAA game. So I do think now between that, what we're seeing with Unreal Engine Fortnite, where you're having individual creators building in there, as well as within Roblox or Minecraft, as well as the massive mod creation scene, I do think we are going to start to see a more equilibrium to where the amount of sales and playtime between a smaller indie dev and a AAA studio is going to become closer, in the same way how a Mr. Beast video will oftentimes have more views than a Hollywood movie at a fraction of the budget.
To add on to that a little bit with UGC and Social First, for what VR will create and like kind of become ubiquitous across all forms of gaming, I think like it was already kind of starting to, it already existed with like Roblox and what other games did people play? Oh, Roblox, Rec Room, like, and Fortnite. All of these games are kind of in their own way like a sort of a metaverse where kids always hang out and create things and play these like lower quality but free experiences. And I think that when you put that in VR, it's like there's so much more reason to participate in that because it's so much more immersive as a social and creation experience. And for better or for worse, whether it like even hurts like AAA developers, kind of like us, Meta is pushing this with Horizon Worlds, like pushing on the store more like lower budget worlds created by the community. And so I think that aspect, I think, will become more ubiquitous across. Like you have more reason to participate in VR immersively, but it can be cross-platform, so you also can just join on like a tablet or any other device. Oh yeah.
Back there, yeah.
Yes. When do we have to be out of here?
All right,
Okay.
we'll speed run.
Are they gonna kick us out?
No, they're not gonna kick us out.
Okay.
I mean, I'll stay. Like, if anyone has to leave, then
Yeah, yeah.
we'll take as many questions as we need to, but I'm not gonna force them.
Yeah, if anyone wants to leave, please feel free. Well, I was budgeting until like 6:45 or 7 p.m. So, if anyone has a question,
We're going to answer questions. All right,
Yes.
If you need to leave, you can leave. No social peer pressure.
yeah,
We're answering questions here.
take a nap in the back or leave if you need.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Question.
That's such a
The
good
question was, what is your take on BCI integration in VR and where is it going? And I'm also excited about this, but
Yes. So that's the sort of online question, right? Is the integration with BCI? Of course, it would be incredible to have a graphical interface that's projected into your brain, right? So I've started to look more into BCI technology. It's starting to enter out of just the medicinal, like hard R&D field, and we're starting to see some commercial use cases. One of the companies in our portfolio, Neurable, actually released a headset, like not a VR headset, but a pair. Yeah, audio headset, right? So it's tracking brain data. Essentially, you can right now see your stress and focus activity levels. Soon you'll be able to do some interaction, so you could think about pausing or playing whenever you're seeing it, but still very low level right now. I know Gabe Newell from Valve has done a lot of research on this, right? Starfish neuroscience, and there was some rumors that the future Valve headset, the Deckard, was going to have some BCI integrations. Which would be really cool. There's been a few companies that have been working on this. There's one up in, I don't think in Boston, in Brooklyn. It was a team I talked to. They made a. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was they had a BCI headset, the Galea, I think it was called. The Galea. Yeah. So there's been a few use cases on it. Our company Neurable actually did a demo where you were able to control some things inside a VR experience using that. But from a commercial aspect, I mean, still, even the cheapest BCI integrated HMDs are about $35,000, and they're still limited in their use case. So I don't think we're going to have anything soon where you'll be able just to control the entire game from your head. But we are making progress there, but I wouldn't expect to see anything commercial this decade for BCIs.
I have unfortunate news. Non-invasive BCIs are probably not going to get you what you want, because our skull is very thick, and well, invasive and non-invasive BCIs are both problematic, and I'm very sad about that. But there is a limit to like what the input that you like. If you have like a cap of like receiving like electromagnetic impulses from your brain or whatever, there's a limit to what you can perceive like through the thick skull and tissue of your head. Yeah. So like, as with basically everything in the VR industry, we're constantly up against many laws of physics, and in this case, laws of biology. And that is like that's unfortunate. So like, I'm sure that non-invasive BCIs will continue to progress, but it might not be like very detailed accurate input like you might expect. On the other side of things, invasive BCIs like Neuralink, where you can put leads directly into the brain and get a much more accurate read and like higher bandwidth of data. That has a lot more applications. I struggle to believe that could be mass market anytime in the next couple decades, given that you require surgery to install that. But it has tons of applications for people with disability or other things like that, and there can be benefits created from that. But there are also the body also doesn't like invasive BCIs because your brain will start to reject the leads over time, and they will lose conductivity and you have to remove it. And so rather than installing it once in your life, you might have to install it every year and like shift locations on your brain, and that's really not good. Just people don't want to do that. So I want BCI to be a thing like more than anything, but as I view it right now, it's like not looking awesome
Yes.
for like huge mass market like input.
Kind of a doomer answer. but
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm on both sides of the spectrum. Sometimes I'm optimistic.
You know if this world will exist tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but I have a skull.
We're talking about VR, not nihilism. All right. Cool. Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the BCI, or you want to go to another question?
No, another question.
Okay.
Yeah, BCI is a little too far out.
What's up?
Do you want to prioritize in the room or have a couple?
You have a couple on Twitch. All right, we did one in the room. Let's do one on Twitch, and then we'll do another one in there. Okay.
So, Ruthless937 on Twitch asks, what are your strategies for dealing with low player retention?
Ooh, with low player retention. Do you want to take that? Or you want me to take that?
I mean,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Actually, I mean, my view on the thing is so myopic. I'm kind of I'll say a short bit. Yeah, so in Vale, because that's all I know. Player retention at the end of the day, the only way to make it better is a little bit at a time through a lot of iteration. There's some stunts and gimmicks you can do, but it's always, I think it all goes back to iteration, just lots of iteration. And then the other term is investment design, figuring out how to make players feel like they have equity in your game and that they're a part of it. A lot of that comes from social, making it so that they can connect with other humans in there and come back to maintain those connections. So I think being social is like probably half of it, and the other half is just iteration. But yeah, that's my succinct enough answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like two answers to that, and you cover like the high level one, right? I mean, I don't think right now it makes a lot of sense to go into low level because there's a lot of really intricate low level strategies you can do to increase retention. And Jonathan spends a lot of time thinking about that, and he is a beast when it comes to it. And we've had many late night calls discussing this, but in order for the sake of time, we won't go into it. But the two biggest things you can do, yes, is focusing on social, right? You make it into someone's social third place. So just like how they would have work or school and then home, make it to where their third place they come back to is your game and your experience. They want to go see their friends. It is an essential part of their existence. And then the other thing to look at is not necessarily live service, but constant content updates, right? Give them more reasons and more things to come back. Crumble cookie every week. No, I'm serious. They have a new cookie every week, and you're thinking, why would I go and get the same cookies if I already had it? Now it has a cult following of people wanting to come and try a new cookie. So having some sort of live content. We have one game in our studio, or excuse me, in our portfolio. They're doing pretty much weekly drops of content, and users always grow, and it keeps retention super high because people want to come back and. Yeah, it's the novelty. It's coming in, seeing something new. So progression systems, new content, leaderboards, a lot of things that keep people interested in novelty, give them a feeling of growth or give them a feeling of meaning through social. So.
That's a really good answer. The frequent content updates. To wrap it up, I would say that if you have low player retention, unfortunately, that is your fault, and you have to make your game better. And that's like, the games industry is hard, but that's like all that matters at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Yes, if you have a bad core loop to your game, it's not going to be retentive. So your core ingredient, the core game needs to be fun to play, right? But I have fun. Just if I stripped away all of the art and the vision and the lore, if I'm just playing the core game, am I having a good time? If your answer is no, and if you don't know the answer to this, have somebody else who you can talk to about this, who isn't worried about your ego or feelings. Play it, see back what they say, read the reviews, read what people say. If you have a bad core loop, you will not be a retentive game. If you have a good core loop, which should be your priority, then you can build out everything else to work and expand that. But I think we had a question in the back. Do you have a question? No? Oh, I saw. Okay. We have a question here.
Yeah, so um, so the question was, with all these different input modalities like EKG, wristbands, obviously motion controllers as we currently know them, other simple controllers, eye gaze input, whatever, all the different ways we have to control stuff in VR right now. Um, your question was, where's this stuff going, or what do we think will be the overwhelming like winner, or what? Yeah, like I I personally, so um I've demoed all of these and some others now. Nothing invasive, but I've demoed all of these now actually, and some very like weirdly like actually novel ones that like are just impractical but interesting, intellectually interesting. And for me, actually, this goes back to an earlier question. I think something we're going to continue to see is like, you guys know when you pick up like a PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, like it works really well, or a Nintendo controller, like they kind of did figure that out. I think the immediacy of these type of physical controllers, because yeah, all other things aside, you need some physicality for fine motor function, I think, just because you need some feedback and stuff. Um, the same way, like if you write in thin air, your handwriting might change slightly, or you need time to get used to it. You lose some precision because you have nothing to anchor with. Um, so yeah, no, I think motion controllers that might still kind of have your A B button, your X Y button, your joysticks, or this kind of thing. I think we're gonna keep going back towards that. Um, I think that Quest has kind of proven that, even though one of the designers that was working only on the controllers at one point had a lot of big creative ideas and wanted to do. They also, I think, during that time felt a bit challenged by the Knuckles from Valve, and they wanted to do something just to like push things forward. And then I forget which Connect it was, but there was one Connect some years ago where like they're like, "All right, we heard you. We're not going to change it. We're keeping the controllers they are. We heard you." Like, okay, okay, okay. Because once you have something like the Quest controller, or something like a PlayStation controller or whatever, it just covers so much surface area so well, and it's just great. And then there might be other things that might be quote unquote productivity driven, that inside out tracking or finger tracking is going to be great for. So like I think with those two, you've kind of got so much covered there.
Yeah, it's going to end up being more optionality based, I think, right? And now you made a great point about the controllers. They're already intuitive when you do it. I'm pretty sure everyone here has held some sort of game remote, either an Xbox or a PlayStation remote. If you look at the Quest remote and you feel it, it feels very similar to having the face buttons, analog sticks. Right, you don't need to think about it. You understand how it works because now that is a path that you've trained yourself. If you talk to someone like Apple, their belief is you don't need a controller. We're going to have gesture-based movement, right? And it's still pretty intuitive. Apple did a really good job of that, putting on the Vision Pro. Eyes felt a little strange at first, just more conceptually, but anyone was able to go on. You could see people who were not familiar with games or really deeply technical, and they were able to use it. I think the blend of what Meta's doing, where now you have some gesture hand-based controls, optionality for more lightweight experiences, that's going to work. But if you have anything more technical, or like Veil, where there's a lot of control and a lot of inputs, and you want haptic feedback in your hands, there's no world where it's better without a controller or some sort of feedback device. But the EKG is really cool. Yeah, that's good.
Um, at the end of the day, like the platform holders will be the ones deciding this, because input modality can't become standard unless every headset supports it, and that sucks because we need eye tracking now. But like also, there will be a spec. So I'm hoping that manufacturers will continue to improve the all of the input modalities, but it has to be convenient. So like I'm hoping that like all the headset manufacturers will support full body, like inside out camera based tracking, because wearing trackers on your feet and hip is never going to be mainstream. It's not convenient enough. And man, I'm blanking. It'll be a spectrum of convenience. Like I hope that the depth of the tracking becomes better and becomes more standard, but the it'll be a spectrum of like convenience and then more haptics and more input.
What would be the greatest common denominator for controllers and hands?
I mean, if we're talking about like raw usage hours, it would have to be hand and eye tracking is what I would predict, because
Not for games.
yeah, not for games, but it like eventually I feel like people might be using headsets about half and half or maybe slightly more not gaming. Like
if you were
years away from now.
sure, right, if you're not using it for gaming, you're most likely going to be doing eyes,
Mhm.
gestures, right,
And they're
predictive models to understand
Apple's take.
right,
Yeah.
what you'd want to do.
and that input modality will work for. There will be games that spawn from that input modality as like the casual kind of mobile game, or like just like moving things around. Yeah. Oh God. Oh gosh. But yeah. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah. No? Good with anyone on Twitch? Oh, we have
So,
one more here.
what are investors looking for? Like, we're all students. We have like ideas of like, yeah, the whole game.
Oh, I know a guy. Wait, I
So,
know a great guy
so,
now.
how do you turn a game idea into a game studio that's a risk? Like, what are what are you looking for to
Sure, right. For what to think for as a game developer looking for money, there's different routes to go. So our firm is a venture capitalist firm. So we bet on these really big ideas to where it's more binary of they might totally fail or they might pay off and become really big. So like the thesis with Veil was early to market, super high quality, retentive player base. People really love it. Our belief is that this could become the Call of Duty of VR, right? Or something to that caliber and scale, or the Counter-Strike. So Veil's a unique one because we believe, all right, it can be at this scale, right? We're not looking at just what's Veil doing right now, but how big can we make Veil to where if anyone wants to play an FPS inside VR, they're going to play Veil. That's the way we're thinking about it. But you also have publishers, right, who are looking for this initial game, who look at it for an investment. We think, at this game, based off this data, it's going to do $1 million in revenue, so we're going to give you X publishing deal. This is for marketing. We're going to get a payback. So that's really the two different ways you're looking at it, or self-funding. So I would say when there are quite a bit of games investors. There's not a ton of VR investors. There's probably 10 or so who are really active investing in the VR space. People do not want to fund your passion project, right? You need to explain why your company's going to be worth $1 billion, right? And so if you have something, and we'll use VR just because that's the point of discussion. If you can make an argument that your game is going to be bigger than Gorilla Tag and it's going to sell headsets and it's going to compel people that they have to get inside and play it because of XYZ, whatever your thesis is, then that's when we want to invest. We say, hey, you've reached for the stars. We can think about profitability later. Right now, you just need to build the biggest business you can. So from our investment perspective, it's going really big. But if you're looking to make a good game that sells well, but isn't going to be absolutely massive, I would say working with a publisher would be the way to go with that. If that answers your question. Or if you had...
And also, is there like, because you obviously the stage of successful companies, like, is there a secret sauce? Are there like things and knowns people have done before that they do that makes it stand out and successful?
I mean, they just build shit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, part of my French. No, but I'm serious. It's like an unrelenting pursuit to continue to build and not becoming complacent with some level of success. So, the difference between some of the founders, someone might, indie dev, they make $1 million on the game. Well, that's great. I'm gonna go on vacation now. I'm good. We can chill, and that's great if you want a lifestyle business. That's a good goal to achieve. But from what we see with a lot of our founders is that they want to double down, not being completely callous in risk analysis, but saying, hey, we want to continue to grow. So like we would see funding not as an opportunity for security, but as fuel that we add to the jet to continue going further. So I would say like a grit, unrelenting desire to
I
build.
was gonna say keyword grit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being able just to put up with a lot of crap for a long time, right? And being able to be resilient. I mean, like with you guys, Veil launched on PC VR, had a lot of excitement. PC VR didn't really have the growing user base, and there was a time where you guys spent a year working on the game. There's no public praise. There's no accolades. There's not a lot of money coming in, right? It's kind of a bleak picture when you're going through it. But it's, hey, we have this vision. We're going to continue to build, right? And we're going to adapt. Like our ego isn't too big to say we were kind of wrong in the way we took this, and then adapt and do it. And you guys have been a great case study on that.
Yeah, emotional endurance, grit, being open to ideas, and like being wrong a lot, and like learning from it. There's for Veil specifically, what we're doing is we want to be on every platform, every device, original IP, just like the same way that people buy a console to play Call of Duty or whatever. We want to be that killer app for VR. Like we feel strongly that we're going to drive a lot of sales of hardware, and because hardware and the platform game is so capital intensive and the forces are so strong, we know that we can do that. So that's our gamble. Like that's what we're striving for.
Does everyone who uses the platform need to experience your app, right? Or are they going to? I mean, at this point, most phones are not literally but functionally pre-installed with Instagram, right? Like that cultural dominance.
Even Windows comes with it. Like the Instagram app is installed in Windows
Right.
11 by default.
And I did, hey, because there's
No,
such
but
a
I'm-
consumer
yeah,
demand
it's-
for that, right? So
we did it just to save everybody some time at this point.
yes, exactly. So yeah, if you can build something that is so grand that everyone has to do it, right? So like what we want with Veil is for someone, you're at school, dude, they're so obsessed. You talk to someone like Jack, who's like playing it, and then they say, man, I have to, you're talking to me like, okay, I have to play it, I have to get it, right? Like, I'm going to buy a headset so I can download this app, and so that's for VR specifically.
Yeah. But yeah, the grit, and a lot of, it's not my phrase, and I don't think it's that eloquent, but one of our devs for a long time said it's all about, he's British and kind of like intense, but ass in chair is what he says. And he's right, because like people talk all day and you can theorize, but if you try stuff and it's bad and you keep trying stuff, eventually you make good stuff. And then you have all the time in the world to like be like, oh, is this actually good or not? But at least you got stuff to look at now. But yeah, like planning, all that, don't worry about it. Just do the thing. You have to have, because the path just starts to appear in front of you. But you do need to be trying to do this on a massive scale. Otherwise, just make some like plug-in for like Microsoft Excel and like sell 500 units of that a month and like go live in Thailand or something. Like there's a lot of ways to make money that are way easier than this and can probably get you whatever lifestyle of comfort you want. This is like actually, there's like go work at a bank or something if you want. Like go do anything else. If you want to do this, it's because you're trying to do art on a massive scale or trying to like interface and connect with a lot of people.
So I would say,
Yeah.
So if you want something material to take away, like if you were going to pitch me, I would be way more enticed if you, instead of saying, oh, I spent a month working on this deck for the vision, right? And you have like a massive presentation for me. If you DM'd me and you said, hey, JP, I spent my last 3 weekends building this prototype in VR. No one's really seen it, but I've been up working late, and I think it's really sick. I want you to check it out. I'm going to choose that guy 10 out of 10 times, right? For the one who's just said, hey, I'm building it. I'm not looking for validation, but I want to grow it. And I did this without resources, and now I want resources to go further. So always choose to build rather than theorize. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah, last thing. Just I have to, because I don't know if this will help at least one person. I'm wondering. Because me, I come from like such one extreme angle, and I'm like so deeply unemployable, and I'm so like weird or whatever. But something I've noticed, because a lot of people have approached me over the last year and a half, everybody wants to like show me their deck or ask me for input on their deck, this and that. And then like I'm like halfway through like listening to them, and then I realize they don't even have a product. Like, dude, like what? Like make something, like even if it's free and you put it on some platform or the app store or whatever, like just launch a thing and get like 100 users, like, and now you can have a super intelligent discussion because like you've actually got something like,
You'll learn way more.
yeah. So like I think that that's really important. Before Veil, I had done several art and not commercially viable projects, to learn the craft and learn the technology and learn more about it. I'd only shipped one game on Steam that was for sale before Veil, but that was really important because, like, you've kind of, at least you've covered some ground, you know? You're like, you might not know how to get all the way to the other side of the world, but you've been on a ship and, like, you went to your nearest island or something. Like, you know, like, there's something there that, like, you got to just, as far as you feel comfortable going, just go like a little bit further where like you're like kind of scared you're going to drown, but like you got to at least go there because otherwise you're just going to have a tough time because it's way muckier and deeper and tougher the further out you go. So yeah, I totally like, it's really weird when people are like, oh, I want to show you my deck, and then like I realize they haven't made anything, and I'm just like, why are you making a deck is what I'm thinking. And it's happened several times to me now because sometimes people come to us because they're like, oh, you guys raised money, so like what do you think about my deck? And it's like, but like I don't. And then, you know, it's funny, as time has progressed, what we learned about these things is just like really simple, show me the product, what is the big idea, get me excited, is what it's all about.
Yeah, like for example, I'm talking to one team right now, and I won't reveal who it is for anonymity, but they built some really cool features for VR and Unreal. They've been doing this in their free time. They made a video announcing it, and the guy said, "Hey, I built this. I want you to check it out." The guy has no deck. He's not pitching me on anything totally set, but he's like, "This is what I have. This is what we've already been building, and here's our vision for it. We need money to keep going," right? And I was able to learn way more just from talking to him about what he built than what he could have hypothesized in the deck. So always have something to show. And I should add on here too, as we're closing up, if you or anyone here wants to talk about VR games or wants to work or has some sort of idea, add me on any of these socials. I'm always happy to talk and discuss these things.
Thank you. It's 6:42. We have time for one more quick question.
I have like really simple question. How did you handle playtesting now?
Hmm.
How did you handle playtesting when you started out? Because VR, huge minority. I can barely find anyone to try my game out, and my game is hard to maneuver with. So like, it really needs that iteration.
Yeah. So, question was, how do we handle playtesting now that we have a player base, and how did we handle it like at our start?
Sure. If I may ask, what type of genre or type of game is it?
It's a VR mech game.
Oh, okay, cool. Mech game. Got it. Yeah, which is like kind of a perfect thing for VR because, yeah, duh. Totally. No, it's very cool. So yeah, VR mech game. The genre aspect aside, I'll tell you a little bit about Veil's trajectory or curve. So early on, when I first got into VR, 2014-ish, I made a lot of fine art experiences, and showcased them at music festivals and museums and other things. Partnered with other artists and did a lot of that stuff. And the great thing about that was, especially for a lot of the early things I did, especially at museums, I ended up, sometimes I would like recruit docents, you know, people to like put on the headset and whatever, but a lot of the time the docents didn't even know how the computer would work. Like it was always like a weird favor or whatever. So you have to like teach them, and sometimes they show up like an hour before and they're like, oh, hey, like I'm down to help you out because your friend told me like this is cool, but like I have to go bartend like around the corner in like an hour. And then you're like, but anyway, we did a lot of those things, and there were, in the course of about 2 years, I put in 2, maybe 3,000 people into VR, and I learned so much from doing those type of events. I learned so much about what was so obviously unintuitive about controls and VR and all this stuff. and I learned a lot from that, like a lot. So depending on what you're doing or what you're trying to learn about or what you're trying to do, there might be like the fine art world, the fashion world, worlds you might not be thinking about, maybe education. I don't know a lot about the education world for this, but there's like certain worlds that get surprisingly excited about this stuff and all jazzed up that might give you a venue to like have a couple hundred people try something. You might be surprised. And then you have to build your experience so that you can have control over it and make it into like a little vignette, like a 5-minute experience. And you learn a lot from that too, because hey, that might be your first time user experience when you go to ship your game to like the market. Like this is like your first 5 minutes, which by the way are still horrible in Vale, admittedly, because we've been like so hardcore gamer centric for so long, and like you keep adding stuff, and that's something we still need to work on. But if you can get your first time user experience right in person, you're showing people around and you learn about all the things that they stumble on over and over again, that could be huge. So don't ignore that possibility. And then the other one is so I've had this talk with a lot of people. The other way that I recommend is early on for Vale, we the thing about XLab is we always showed our face. I noticed that a lot of other studios are really anonymous and strange, and like I don't know what it is. They just like don't talk or show themselves or something. I don't know why, whatever. And if you show yourself or you vlog or you make clips on YouTube, you do anything showing what you're doing, people will be kind of curious. There is a built-in audience with VR that they will just, even if your YouTube channel only has like a couple thousand views over 6 months or whatever, like there's so many people I've met in the VR space where I'm like, yo, I've seen your videos, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or I saw your GitHub, you had that plugin for that thing. And people are like, really? And I'm like, yeah, VR is really small. Like, duh. Like, how would I not know you exist? So VR is really small. Now, if you put yourself out there, allow yourself to be vulnerable, and are open, you will find 20, 100, 200 people instantly that just out of curiosity will take a Steam key, join your Discord server, and try out what you're doing.
Yeah. People want to help. Right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like people want to help you. Like most people are good, especially like even here at Tech, right? You have so many intellectually curious people who are like, yeah, I'll try it or go do it.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah, and you have to be comfortable with the idea of rejection or negative feedback, right? And you have to be comfortable saying there might be someone who's an asshole and just says, hey, this game sucks. I feel sick and I don't ever want to play it again. And you have to take that and say, okay, I can optimize for this, right? Don't take it personally. It's not a character attack on you, and just use that as part of the feedback process. So, yeah, get comfortable with the rejection and negativity.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's what vulnerability is, right? Because, like, if you already know the outcome, you're not vulnerable, like, whatever. You're just doing the thing. But yeah, it's really important. Just put yourself out there. There's so many different YouTube channels of different people that, like, I follow. And a lot of them never crack even 2,000 views, but I know they're going to do amazing things because they have all the ingredients. It's obvious. So, like, I think it's really important. Yeah, so just show your face. Like, honestly, I think that's been a big thing because people need to, like, connect with you. And if you don't show your face, like, you're really not putting yourself out there. You're, like, hiding at that point. So why would they care? Like, right?
I mean, you could join a Discord community, find, like, a VR community and be like, hey, I've been building this. I know a lot of you guys play similar XYZ game. Could you come try this and just tell me what you think about it? Yeah.
What I would do I'm just gonna wrap it up really quick because we're over time.
Oh my God.
What I would do is another person who does VR indie dev stuff is I would publish it in early access and I would put in the game like, please give me feedback. Here's my Discord link, and like just link it to a Discord server and just have feedback there. Meta has actually not really good, but some pretty detailed analytics on like crash rates and bugs, or just mainly crash rates.
Feature where you can submit a report and even film a video There's some
Yeah.
Good
features.
tools.
So
Yeah,
Meta has
actually,
decent tools
Meta
built
has an
in.
entire playtesting framework that you can explore that you really should look at. Actually, it's very interesting. Yeah, and you can even invite people to play your game and test it through an email link or a URL. Like, they've got some really cool stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that for like a playtest at Arcade's
Yeah,
Mm.
some really nice stuff.
Right.
And you can open and close the playtest and like.
All right. I'm glad. I hope that helped. Thank you so much to our two amazing guests, JP Minetos and Albert Ovadia. Please give them a round of applause. Albert, JP is a Atlanta native, but as of right now he is. But Albert actually flew here from Germany to be here. So, yes, thank you again. Thank you to all of you for coming and everyone on Twitch. I don't know how many of you there are, but oh, sweet. So that if you add that, that's about a full room. So yeah, thank you for coming. I guess if you event is over, if you want to come say hi really quick.
Yeah, and
Well-
don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, reach out or come say hi to them. We're going to be heading out in like 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Also, this is a great time to plug if you want to make a game for VR and you're specifically interested in a VR game. We do have 2 MetaQuest 2 headsets available that we're hopefully going to start loaning out next year if you need those to test your game.
Also, please collaborate with GTXR in that initiative.
GTXR, please collab with VGDev.
Yes, we have a VR game which we would like to collaborate with next semester.